The letter exists. It survives in the Hungarian National Archive, a single sheet, written in a firm, educated hand sometime in the early years of the 17th century. The subject is a land dispute. A neighboring noble, emboldened, most likely, by the sustained absence of a military husband on yet another campaign against the Ottomans, has moved against a border property. The legal claim is thin. The argument is speculative, and the woman who sets her pen to the page in response knows this with complete precision, knows the correct statutes to cite, the correct officials before whom the matter must be placed, the specific language that will close the challenge without concession and without theater. The letter is not angry. It does not need to be angry. It is exact. It is the work of someone who has been managing the law of a great estate for decades, who has managed it through Ottoman raids and bad harvests and the continuous legal opportunism of neighbors who looked at a woman alone on a frontier and calculated incorrectly that she could be moved. It is signed, Elizabeth Báthory, not wife of, not widow of, Elizabeth Báthory, her name, her seal. Welcome to Portraits of the Past, where we explore the lives of those whose legacies continue to echo through time. She was born in 1560 at Báthory, in the eastern Hungarian lands that a generation of war with the Ottoman Empire had made into something harder than a province and softer than a battlefield. The name she was born into was not a modest one. The Báthory family were among the oldest and most powerful of the Hungarian noble houses, a family whose branches had extended across Transylvania and Royal Hungary for centuries, whose members moved through the highest offices of the region as a matter of inheritance rather than ambition. Her uncle Stephen Báthory would become King of Poland. Her cousin Andrew would become a cardinal of the church. Another cousin governed Transylvania as its prince. Elizabeth Báthory did not arrive at power through marriage or fortune or the good luck of proximity to the right man at the right moment. She was born inside it. She was formed by it from her first day. Her education was commensurate with that background. She learned to read and write in Hungarian, Latin, and German, functional literacies in that world. For a woman who would be expected to manage correspondence with courts and legal bodies across the Habsburg kingdom, she was trained in the administration of estates and household management from childhood, not as a domestic accomplishment, but as a practical skill in a world where the running of a noble household was a serious exercise in law, logistics, and sustained authority. The Báthory family culture expected competence of its women. It prepared them for it. And in Elizabeth's case, that preparation would prove, within a few years of her marriage, to be entirely necessary. She was 15 when she married Ferenc Nadasdy. He was 19. Nadasdy was one of the most celebrated military figures of his generation. The Turks called him the Black Knight of Hungary, a name earned across decades of combat on one of the most actively contested frontiers in Europe, where the eastern edge of the Habsburg world pressed against the expanding Ottoman Empire, and the men who held that line did so with their bodies and their blood, and a particular quality of violence that the chronicles of the age recorded with more admiration than unease. He was not a decorative man. He was a soldier, and a formidable one, and his marriage to Elizabeth was arranged with the same cold logic that arranged all such unions in that world, the alignment of two great houses in the arithmetic of territory and influence. But what survives of their correspondence suggests something more than calculation. They wrote to each other through the long years of his campaigns with a directness and specific concern that is not easily dismissed as formal courtesy. He asked after the estates, after the children, after matters that required her judgment. She offered it. They operated across the distances of war and administration as genuine partners in the management of a shared enterprise. And the enterprise was vast. He was absent for most of their marriage, not occasionally absent, chronically, structurally absent, in the way that the long Turkish War, which began in 1593 and consumed the better part of a decade, made absence not an interruption, but the fundamental condition of a soldier's life. And in that absence, the estates were Elizabeth's. To understand what that meant requires some care about geography. The Nadashdi holdings, combined through marriage with the Báthory interests she brought with her, extended across what is now Western Hungary, Slovakia, and parts of Austria. Multiple castles, dozens of villages, agricultural land, water rights, mill rights, defensive fortifications, and the overlapping jurisdictions of a great noble estate in a region where legal boundaries were contested by the same forces that contested military ones. Chete Castle in the Carpathian highlands of what is now northwestern Slovakia was one property among many, a working administrative center for a substantial territory, its towers raised not for ornament but for observation, its walls backing onto mountain passes that the Ottomans used. From its keep, on a clear day, you could see the roads that raiders came along. This was a frontier in the precise and serious meaning of that word. The consequences of administrative failure here were not inconvenience. They were disaster. For the thousands of people living within the bounds of the estate who depended on the competence of its management for their safety, their livelihoods, their access to the justice that noble jurisdiction was theoretically bound to provide. Raids came, harvests failed. Legal challenges arrived from men who looked at a woman holding a great estate, without a husband's military reputation to reinforce her position, and calculated that the moment was favorable. The documentary record indicates they calculated incorrectly. Elizabeth Báthory's surviving correspondence runs to dozens of letters. Instructions to stewards, directions to legal representatives in cases before the Hungarian courts, communications with church officials and local administrators about the management of the estates and the welfare of the people within them. Letters to parents, carrying the news of the land he trusted to her care, written in the practical, unsentimental register of a working administrator who knew that he needed information rather than reassurance. And there is another category of letter, less voluminous but present in the record, that the popular portrait of Elizabeth Báthory has, with remarkable consistency, declined to include. There is documented evidence that she intervened on more than one occasion in cases involving women on her estates who had been subjected to assault or mistreatment, by men who assumed that the absence of noble protection meant the absence of any protection at all. There is evidence of refuge provided. There is evidence of a household staff, large by the standards of the period, in which women occupied positions of genuine responsibility, not merely ornamental or menial roles. This material does not resolve the accusations that arrive later in this story. It is not presented here as exoneration, but its systematic omission from the legend is itself a datum, and one worth holding carefully. What has been left out, by whom, and in service of which story, is the central question of her legacy. Here is where the archive requires honesty about its own limits. Almost everything that has fixed Elizabeth Báthory in popular memory derives from accounts compiled after her arrest in December of 1610. Many of those accounts were produced within the context of a legal process that had, by any careful reading of the political circumstances surrounding it, strong reasons to reach a specific conclusion. The blood-bathing legend, the image that has defined her in 4 centuries of popular culture, the claim that she bathed in the blood of murdered girls in the belief that it would preserve her youth, does not appear in any document contemporary with the events. It appears in texts written decades after her death, in sources removed by several degrees from any primary record. The scholar Tony Thorne, whose careful archival work remains among the most reliable in the field, has documented the specific genealogy of that legend, where it appears first, and how far that first appearance lies from the events it purports to describe. The archive does not permit a definitive verdict. Anyone who offers you one is selling you something the documents do not support. What the archive does permit is a distinction. The legend and the documented record are not in tension with each other. They describe different people. Keeping that distinction clear is not advocacy. It is simply what honest work with a primary source requires. Ferenc Nadasdy died in January of 1604. He had been ill for some time. 30 years of campaigning had accumulated in his body the way war always accumulates, not as a single wound, but as a progressive diminishment that no physician in the early 17th century had the tools to fully address. He was 48 years old. His will was specific: the management of the combined estates and the guardianship of their 3 surviving children passed to Elizabeth. Not to a male relative, not to a court-appointed administrator. To the woman who had managed the estates through the entirety of his military life, and who had, in his recorded assessment, demonstrated every qualification the task required. What his will created in practical terms was one of the most formidable independent landholders in the Kingdom of Hungary. The kingdom, at the moment of his death, was governed by King Matthias II, a monarch whose treasury was severely depleted by the long Turkish War, whose political position was under pressure from the Habsburg court in Vienna, and who owed considerable sums to the Báthory and Nadasdy families for loans that had helped sustain that war's financing across the previous decade. The full weight of that financial architecture belongs to the next chapter of this story, and it will be examined there with the care it deserves. But the foundation of it must be acknowledged now, without overstating what it means. At the moment of her husband's death, Elizabeth Báthory was not a widow retiring from the world. She was, by any objective calculation, among the wealthiest and most powerful individuals in the kingdom, and the king who would eventually order her imprisonment was, in specific and documented financial terms, in her debt. In the years following Nadashdi's death, she continued the work. She managed the castles and the villages and the legal disputes and the ledgers. She conducted her correspondence in her own name. She exercised the full authority of her position without apology and without the mediation of a male proxy, because she had been exercising it for decades, and because the world the documents describe is entirely consistent about what she was and what she was capable of. There is nothing in those years, in the record she left behind, to suggest what is coming, or almost nothing. Read the correspondence of certain men in the Hungarian court during this period with sufficient care against the grain of its formal courtesies, and you notice something, not hostility, not yet. Something subtler, a quality of attention, the kind that accumulates around a figure who has become, by objective measure, inconveniently significant. The debts go unmentioned. The power is not named directly, but it is being observed. The ground beneath Elizabeth Báthory in the years following her husband's death is as solid as it has ever been. The archive is entirely plain on this point. She stands on the full weight of her lineage, her competence, her legal authority, and the specific hard-won formidability of a woman who has been managing a war-zone estate for 30 years and has never once been found wanting. But ground in the world she inhabits is not made only of documents and deeds. It is also made of the willingness of powerful men who want to leave it undisturbed. The paint is dry on this chapter, but the archives are vast. Subscribe and return to portraits of the past. The next exhibit awaits.